everyone kept being like, what just happened? Why is Daniel Day-Lewis so obsessed with you?
Welcome to We Can't Print This.
It's a podcast that tells you the story you don't know behind the story you do know.
I'm Eden Dawn.
And my name is Fiona McCann.
And we have a treat for you. So we are wrapping up our second season here. And for the last couple of episodes, we wanted to do something fun. So we are turning the mic on each other to hear our behind the story stories. So today, I am going to interview the very elusive, very difficult to get to, the absolute icon, my co-host, Fiona McCann, who is a current columnist for the Irish Times, the former editor-in-chief of Portland Monthly Magazine, and the person who will steal the show at every single karaoke party that exists. Fiona, thank you for taking my interview request, first of all.
You're so welcome. I don't know how my people got me on this show, but anyway.
What is the story behind your story you have come here today to tell us, to share with the people?
Great question, Eden.
Thank you.
May I compliment your interview skills?
You may. I have been working on this list forever.
And your hair, which looks lovely today.
Thank you. Shame
our listeners can't see it. So this story takes place in 2010.
Okay.
When I was...
Which I thought was 3 years ago, and then just literally had to figure out that it was 13 years ago.
When I was impossibly young and juvenile.
Right.
I was barely out of nappies. I was a very young reporter, and I had just started working at the Irish Times. And as the sort of young reporter who had the arts beat in general, and the most flexible schedule, because I didn't have kids or anything like that. Schedule? I can't even remember which one to say now.
And you're young and fun.
I'm so fun. Oh, no, I was. Anyway, they would send me to London. And so one day they were like, do you want to go to London and interview Daniel Day-Lewis?
Yes.
And I said, I think I do.
Yeah, of course you do.
And now my husband has some objection when I tell this story, because I will say that the first thing about going into a room in which Daniel Day-Lewis exists is that he is possibly the most handsome and magnetic person I've ever been in a room with. Yeah, it's tough, because I honestly didn't fancy him that much from his work. But then I was in a room with him.
But as the kids say, he's got the riz. Oh, you know that?
The riz. He's got the riz. I never even heard that expression before.
It's charisma. He's got the riz.
I see what you did there.
He has it. But also Daniel Day-Lewis and your husband kind of look similar. So I feel like he is benefiting from this.
Yeah, I was like, this is all rising tides lift all boats here.
Exactly, Dave. Come on.
So I got to interview Daniel Day-Lewis. Now, at the time, I was a very young reporter, and part of the reason I got sent was because our film critic, who was a very revered, very illustrious and longtime film critic, Michael Dwyer, had become ill with cancer and was undergoing treatment. And so usually for those really high profile film things, they'd send Michael, but they couldn't send Michael because of his cancer treatment. But he had such a long-standing reputation that people like Daniel Day-Lewis knew him, and they were... And I think part of the reason that the Irish Times was often invited to these very high-profile interview circuits were because of Michael.
It was so was Daniel expecting Michael, and then this little hotsy-totsy redhead in front of me showed up instead?
Michael, you have transformed. He was so warm and kind of generous and charismatic. I've mentioned that. He had the riz. But he was also just really kind. And he immediately was like, oh, how's Michael? I'm wondering how he's doing. And I didn't really know Michael, but I had overheard a conversation very recently in the newsroom where somebody had been asking the same question. And someone else said, oh, he's on a new regime. And I think he's doing really well on it. He changed some sort of treatment. He was on a new treatment plan. So I relayed this to Daniel. And I was like, oh, he's doing great. I think he's on this new treatment plan. It seems to be going well. Hello. What did I know? But I'd heard somebody else say that.
Yeah.
And so on we went and we had our interview, and Daniel bedazzled me, and away I went home to write up the interview.
Write up the interview called Daniel's Bedazzlement.
Daniel the Bedazzlement.
7,000 words
DDL.
by Fiona McCann.
How many words for icy blue eyes can I come up with? Anyway, so really kind of lovely interview, and he was so generous and warm. Everything was great. And yes, Eden Dawn, you're here with a question.
Before we move on, Do you remember in Gangs of New York when Daniel Day-Lewis taught himself how to not blink and tap his eye with a knife? Do you remember this? No. This was like he is supposed to have a glass eye in the film, and he's like trying to be a real badass and like somehow kind of, exert his whatever manliness. And he takes the end of a knife and taps his eyeball to like show his steadfastness. And I remember reading an interview that he taught himself to literally tap his eyeball with a knife and not blink so that it was believable that it was a glass eye.
How committed is that?
How committed is that? That's all I have to say about Daniel. Thank you for taking my question. Continue on.
It was more of a comment than a question.
That was more of a comment. Oh, no. I'm that person. I have more of a comment than a question. No, shut it. Sit down.
So the point is, anyway, that's classic Daniel Day-Lewis. He's like big into method acting, and he's always all the way in on a role. And also, it turns out, a very lovely person. So, and this is at the height of his career as well. Like he was like peak Daniel Day-Lewis at the time. So I came home, wrote my piece about Daniel Day-Lewis, went on with my life. And then a few months later, Michael, who had been battling cancer for a long time, died.
Oh.
And yeah, it was really, really sad. And the sad thing was, not only was this sort of legend of Irish reporting had died, but it's sad to be in a newsroom when everyone is so connected to him personally. Like everybody in the newspaper was devastated. And there were just a few of us who really didn't know him that well. And so when it came, his funeral was massive. I mean, they were like, it was going to be huge. The whole country was kind of mourning him, and the whole arts community for sure. And so they were like, well, who are we going to send to cover this? Because everyone here is bereaved. Oh, Fiona doesn't really know him. We'll send her as the reporter to cover the funeral, because they wanted to write about it. But they didn't want to send somebody who was going to be grieving in that moment.
Yes.
And so the funeral was huge. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous funeral. I remember so many beautiful words of tribute. And then there was kind of a post-funeral smaller gathering for just really close friends of Michael.
Also, of course there was. I know, here are the things I know about the Irish. You do a funeral.
By God, we do.
It up. You do it up, and there's a funeral, and then there's the after funeral, and then there's the singing portion.
Yes, the singing portion. So anyway, they were like, listen. So I kind of came out of the funeral, and I said, well, what do you? They were like, no, look, you should go to the next part too. I think it's important that you also attend that, because there might be something to come out of that will add to your piece. And I think, so I was like, of course. So this is the tiny intimate gathering of people and me and Daniel Day-Lewis.
And of course, your boyfriend, Daniel Day-Lewis.
And Daniel Day-Lewis sees me there, and immediately he's like, oh, Fiona, who has just been bereaved, her colleague has left her, and obviously that's why she's at this tiny gathering of intimate friends. I must approach her and give her the warmest, giantest, longest lasting hug of all time, because I am a kind and compassionate person in front of all her colleagues. So Daniel Day-Lewis sees me. He's like, oh, Fiona. And he comes over and just...
Spotlight hits upon you.
Spotlight upon me.
The rest of the room goes dark.
Wraps
Music comes up. Daniel walks into the room. The crowds part through and then just you and he under the light.
As he wraps me in his arms and presses me to his chest in front of
everyone you work with.
Everybody I work with.
Who are so befuddled.
And I am there with my face pressed against Daniel Day-Lewis for many seconds, cheek to his chest, listening to his heartbeat and thinking, oh dear, I think he thinks I'm really bereaved right now. And so he then...
I'm sorry to laugh. It is
he holds me and he's saying to me, Fiona, this must be so, so hard for you.
Oh, no.
Now it's really kind of awkward.
Yes.
So I am against his chest, with the ear to his chest, thinking, where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? And is there a way to exit this with grace for all? Because I know that my colleagues are looking at me. I know that Daniel clearly thinks, and in fairness, it's logical for him to think, I just met her a few months ago. She was giving me these updates.
It is now she's classic miscommunication. I see exactly how it happened on all sides.
And Daniel, I'm very sorry if you're listening to this, but I really didn't know how to kind of extricate myself and keep us all intact. And
also the last thing you want to say at a funeral of somebody is, I'm fine. We weren't close. That feels incredibly disrespectful.
I know. And not the last thing you ever want to do in your life is disengage from a Daniel Day-Lewis embrace also. So I was in a complicated spot.
Yeah, you were.
I was in a very difficult spot.
It's true.
And very cozy, I might add.
It was a tangled web of coziness.
So all of these things are going on in my brain as I just inhale the scent of Daniel Day-Lewis a little bit longer, just so I can work out what to do, obviously. And finally, you know, he releases me and he looks deeply into my eyes with those steely blue eyes of his. And there's like been such an intake of breath around me. Like all of my colleagues, I can feel their eyes upon me. And he says, Fiona, this must be so, so hard for you. And I was like, I think it's harder for those who were closer to him.
Perfect answer. Perfect answer.
And I really feel for those closer. Yeah. Because I didn't want to be like, Daniel, sure, I never even met him. And I also didn't want to be like, yes, I am deeply affected and start crying fake tears. So I thought if I went for some middle ground, like, it must be harder for the people who were closer to him, that we'd all save face here.
I think that was the only solution. I think you gave the exact prop. Nope. Okay, you're shaking your head.
Well, no, it was fine. It was. I feel like it was the only graceful way to get out of it.
It was, of course, and he's trying to be kind.
He's trying to be kind, and I don't want to embarrass him either.
Of course not.
And also, you know, I'm not gonna like push back in an embrace from Daniel Day-Lewis. Who in their right mind would do that? And also, I am being watched by the entire Irish Times at that point. So I then have to somehow get myself back to the newsroom to cover this funeral. And I remember walking in and everyone being like, everybody who was there being like,
what the hell?
What is going on,
Yeah.
Fiona? What is going on? Like, we send you for one job and the next thing you know. And so I had to somehow.
You had to tell people I'm running away with Daniel Day-Lewis. I'm Mrs. Day-Lewis now.
I'm like, he's just really hot for me. And I had to let him down so that I could keep it professional.
Yeah.
No, I just, to be honest with you, I didn't even know what to say to people. It was such a heightened emotional day. And I'd also just been hugged by Daniel Day-Lewis. I didn't even know my arse from my elbow at that point. I was like, things are just crazy. And yeah, everyone kept being like, what just happened? Why is Daniel Day-Lewis so obsessed with you? I mean, the story was kind of gaining legs at that point.
Of course it was, because A, everyone loves office gossip.
Yes.
B, people love celebrity gossip. If you find a way to combine those two things together,
in which me and Daniel Day-Lewis are involved.
Never was there a more powerful recipe for something to spread like wildfire through an office.
Yes, this story was getting legs and I wasn't about to chop them off.
No, because you're also in the point of your career where you're like, yeah, everybody know my name.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had to go and write the story and just let everybody sit with the mystery of why Daniel Day-Lewis was holding me for so very long.
So long.
In that moment. And all credit to Daniel Day-Lewis. What compassion he was showing. What is like the fact that he even remembered me from this hotel interview. Like he was just being the best possible human. And it's arguable whether I was or not, but I was doing my best. I didn't know how to get out of it while saving face for everybody involved. I did the best I could.
Yeah, you did the best you could in a tricky spot.
And maybe I stayed there like for a second too long. I don't know.
You
who
are
was counting?
a woman. You are a red-blooded woman.
I am a human being.
Yeah.
And it was Daniel Day-Lewis, and lovely chap. And I honestly, it has endeared me to him forever because I couldn't believe how kind he was.
Yeah.
In that moment. And also, did he do me any harm? No, he didn't do me any harm.
Did you ever tell your coworkers, and did you ever see Daniel again?
That's the last time I saw Daniel, because despite everything we'd been through, he did not take my number, which, you know, but I think we both agreed that was going to be the end. I think we both knew that was our parting moment.
You know, shooting stars, they just burn so bright that then they have to burn out. and fade away because the world couldn't handle them any longer.
Yeah,
and that was you guys. You were the shooting star of an office relationship.
We didn't want to drag it out. And I had to maintain my professional standards.
I know.
So I couldn't let it go anywhere, Eden.
And he was probably going then deep method to be a cobbler or something and needed to focus on that.
Exactly. And I really felt, although Daniel was important to me, Eden, my career was also important to me.
Hashtag feminism.
Hashtag feminism. So that was the end of our interaction. And I wrote the piece about Michael Dwyer's funeral. Obviously, I saved my private moments with Daniel Day-Lewis for now, where I'm telling the whole entire world, and any dinner party I've been at ever since.
Right.
But that's how private and careful I am with such experiences.
Did you ever reveal it to your coworkers what happened? Or did you literally let them just keep this air of mystery about you?
I felt at the time it was so awkward to even say, like, what I think I might have said, I think it's because we had met at the press event a few months ago, and I think he was just being kind. I didn't want to be like, oh my gosh, he thinks I'm like BFFs with Michael because I'm at this intimate gathering. Yeah. And also, yeah. So I didn't want, I guess, did I fully disabuse everybody? Did I offer, because who could even explain it? That was one explanation. But, also there was obviously the animal attraction.
Right.
So
that's it too, and you just let them choose your own adventure.
Yeah. And I did say, I think I told people to some extent like what had gone on, but it was like kind of an awkward story to tell in the moment anyway. And also I will say, fair play Daniel Day-Lewis, because I think it was the thing that made most people had a really tough day in that newsroom.
Yes, and it brought a bit of joy.
It was kind of fun to be like, everybody was like, oh my God, did you see Daniel Day-Lewis make a beeline for Fiona and grab her up in his arms? And like, I think it helped. I think myself and Daniel did something for the newsroom that day. And Daniel, I like to keep saying that.
Yeah, I know you do. Here's what I have to say. If at my funeral, which will be attended by almost the entire cast of 90210, with the exception of Luke Perry, rest in peace. If while they are there clearly mourning my loss, and somebody I know, including you, anyone is fair game, needs to embrace say Jason Priestley, and
it might be necessary.
And it starts some long gossip that's running around and people are entertained, I would be thrilled. I would be thrilled to participate in one last round of entertainment for everyone that loved me. So I think that you are in the clear.
I also think, that's such a nice way to end it, because from everything I heard about Michael Dwyer, he was an exceptionally warm and generous person. And I don't think he would have minded one bit. He would have thought it was hilarious, I bet. And I think he would have been entertained by this situation too.
A film star and a journalist giving everybody a little something. I think it seems so appropriate and lovely.
So appropriate. Yes. So I promised to embrace Jason Priestley at your funeral also.
Oh, God. See, we have it on the record here.
Yes, so. I vow. I will take that one for the team also. I do have a record in this. So.
Don't off me, though, to try to get to Priestley, is what I have to say.
You're looking at the glint in my eye. So that's it. That's my story, or one of my many stories. Do you want to interview for me for more? I have loads more, Eden.
I hope to. I think that was a very good one for today. So I want to say thank you to my guest, Fiona McCann. You can find her on the internet.
Mainly at wecanprintthis.com.
And you can invite her to your karaoke parties if you would like to be outdone. If you need help with a Halloween costume, she is there in a pinch. Or if you want to talk about bread, she understands bread.
Oh, that is so true. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I almost feel like I want to get a handshake from you now, Eden.
We just did a Paul Hollywood handshake for people who don't know what that is. Then Google it and culture yourself. Yes, thank you so much for having me, Eden. It was a real pleasure coming on. I'm so excited for your podcast. I've listened to it all the time and I'm a really big fan. Oh my God. That's so lovely. Well, thank you to our producer, Miranda Schaefer, and to Dave Depper for our intro music. This podcast was recorded at the Writer's Block in Portland, and we definitely don't have a third office mate. We never have met anyone else.
No, it's just the two of us, right?
Just the two of us.
And if you are a writer with a great behind the story that you think might even beat that one, good luck. Or just write to us at weekendprincess@gmail.com and tune in next week for the tables to turn once more when I interview a surprise guest.
Who is it?
I can't tell you.
Okay, well, we'll have to see. Also, Rachel, we love you. Don't be mad.
Bye.